Carl Jung, inner peace, emotional freedom. Three powerful concepts that can change your entire life if you're truly ready to look within. Have you ever felt like the world has too much power over you? A comment, a silence, a rejection. Sometimes it's not the event, but how you feel when it happens. And here's the truth most people never realize. This has nothing to do with willpower. It's not about suppressing your emotions or pretending to be okay when you're clearly not. Most people spend their whole lives trying to control the outside world, but they never learn to master their inner world. And that's why they keep getting hurt by the same people, the same patterns, the same emotional triggers. Today, you'll discover a truth that Carl Jung, Zen masters, and ancient wisdom keepers understood deeply. Nothing can truly affect you once you change the way you perceive reality. This isn't just another mindset trick. It's a path to mental strength, emotional clarity, and spiritual peace. You'll learn why negative emotions are not your enemies. They are messengers guiding you toward healing. So if you're ready to access unshakable peace, emotional resilience, and a higher level of consciousness, stay with me, because what you're about to learn might just change the way you live, and more importantly, the way you feel. Let's get one thing clear. This isn't about pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's not about forcing fake positivity or trying to shut down your feelings just to appear strong. True strength, real, lasting inner peace, doesn't come from denying your emotions. It comes from understanding them, from transforming the way you relate to what's happening inside of you. You see, most people are stuck in a cycle. They wake up, react, survive the day, and repeat. Their emotions are constantly hijacked by what others say or do. But the real cause of suffering isn't the outside world. It's the internal filter through which they experience life. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In other words, your unhealed emotions, your buried beliefs, and your automatic reactions, they're not just there. They're shaping your reality every single day. But here's the good news. You don't have to keep living like this. There is a way to regain control without ignoring your emotions and without trying to control everything around you. In this video, you're going to learn how to understand your emotional triggers without being ruled by them. Reprogram your inner narrative so nothing and no one can disturb your peace. Use the wisdom of Carl Jung and Zen philosophy to awaken a deeper part of yourself, the part that stays calm even when life gets loud. If this kind of content speaks to you, hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications. This channel is a space for deep transformation, real healing, and awakening your true self. You're not alone on this journey, and if you stay with me to the end, you'll walk away with more clarity, strength, and freedom than you've felt in a long time. Most people believe their emotions are reactions to the outside world. Something happens. Someone disrespects them, ignores them, fails to meet their expectations, and they feel hurt, angry, or anxious. It seems obvious to blame the external event. But what if the real cause isn't what happened, but how you interpreted it? Your mind is not a passive mirror. It doesn't simply reflect reality, it filters it. Every experience you have is filtered through layers of belief systems, emotional memory, and unconscious patterns. That's why two people can go through the same event and respond completely differently. One stays grounded, the other falls apart. It's not luck, it's not genetics. It's the internal lens each person is looking through. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He spoke of the unconscious as a vast, hidden landscape, full of memories, wounds, fears, and archetypes that shape how we see the world. When we don't explore what's hidden inside us, Those inner forces begin to control our behavior without us even realizing it. That's why you might overreact to a small comment, or spiral into shame after a minor mistake, or feel paralyzed by fear when facing something new. The emotion feels like it's coming from the present moment, but most of the time it's coming from the past, from an old wound, from a belief you absorbed years ago and never questioned. Maybe someone once told you that you had to be perfect to be loved. Maybe you learned to earn affection by pleasing everyone around you. Maybe you internalized the idea that failure equals worthlessness. These ideas became part of your inner script, and now they color everything you experience. So when you feel rejection, it doesn't just sting. It confirms the fear that you're not enough. When someone criticizes you, it doesn't just frustrate you, it activates an old belief that your value depends on being accepted. And when life feels uncertain, you don't just feel discomfort, you feel panic, because deep down you believe you need control to feel safe. The problem is not the emotion itself. Emotions are not enemies, they're signals. They carry information about your inner world. But if you don't know how to listen to them, if you constantly suppress them, judge them, or react impulsively, then they become heavy. They start to accumulate, and eventually they shape the way you see everything. That's where awareness becomes your greatest ally. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm. The wind is howling. The rain is pouring. Your instinct is to fight it, to run, to resist, to scream at the sky. But what if instead of resisting, you simply stood still and watched? That's the beginning of transformation. When you stop trying to fix the storm and instead observe your reaction to it, you step into a new level of power. You realize that you are not the storm. You are the sky it's passing through. This is where the teachings of Zen meet the psychology of Jung. Both paths invite you to stop identifying with every thought that enters your mind, to stop becoming every emotion that rises in your body. Instead, you become the observer, the quiet presence behind the chaos. And from that space, you gain the freedom to choose your response instead of being a prisoner of your reactions. It might sound simple, but this shift changes everything. Because once you realize you don't have to believe every thought, once you learn that your emotions don't define you, you begin to experience life from a completely different place. You stop living on autopilot. You start responding from awareness. That's how you begin to take your power back, not by controlling what happens outside, but by shifting the way you relate to what happens inside. And here's what's even more powerful. As your internal world shifts, your external reality starts to follow. The people who used to trigger you lose their grip. The same situations that once overwhelmed you become manageable. And slowly you begin to feel lighter. Not because life got easier, but because you're no longer carrying the same weight. That's the path to emotional freedom. Not detachment from life, but deeper connection with yourself. Not perfection, but presence. Not resistance, but awareness. And it all starts by asking a simple question. What part of me is feeling this, and why? When you begin to ask that with honesty, you begin to heal. There's something subtle yet deeply powerful that most people overlook. Emotions don't just arise randomly, they follow patterns. These emotional patterns are often rooted in stories we've told ourselves for years, sometimes without even knowing it. Stories like, I'm not good enough, people always leave, or if I fail, I'll lose everything. These inner narratives act like silent scripts, playing out in the background and shaping our behavior in every situation. But here's the truth. These scripts were written in moments of fear, pain, or confusion. They were formed as a response to protect us from perceived threats, emotional abandonment, shame, humiliation. They served a purpose at one time, but now many of them are outdated. And yet, we still live by them as if they were facts. Carl Jung often emphasized the concept of shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress, deny, or reject. These hidden aspects don't disappear. They show up in unexpected ways, in the way we react when someone criticizes us, in our fear of being seen, in our habit of self-sabotage. The shadow isn't something evil or dangerous. It's simply the part of you that holds everything you haven't yet integrated. Every emotion you avoid becomes a shadow. Every truth you suppress gains power in silence. Let's take fear as an example. Most people see fear as something to escape. They try to numb it, avoid it, or cover it with false confidence. But fear isn't always about danger. Often it's about exposure. It arises when you're about to do something that challenges a deep-rooted belief about your identity. Fear whispers, "What if you fail?" But beneath that, the real question is, what if you fail and it means you're not enough? And that's the real work, to sit with that discomfort long enough to hear the real message behind it. To pause, breathe, and ask, where did I learn this? Who told me that I had to prove my worth, and why am I still carrying that belief now? The moment you begin to question your automatic responses, you interrupt the cycle. You create space, and in that space, you make room for something new, a different reaction, a different interpretation, a different choice. That's what Jung meant by integration. It's not about fixing yourself, it's about reclaiming the parts you left behind. It's about meeting your anger, your sadness, your jealousy, not with shame, but with curiosity. Because every intense emotion is trying to show you something. Anger often points to violated boundaries. Sadness can reveal an attachment you need to release. Envy might highlight a part of you that's longing to grow. If you stop fighting these emotions, they transform. They stop controlling you and start guiding you. But you have to be willing to slow down. Modern life is fast. Everything pushes us to react instantly, to respond to messages, defend our opinions, prove our value. But real transformation doesn't happen in speed. It happens in stillness. In the moments when you pause and allow yourself to feel, to notice, to reflect. Zen philosophy calls this being with what is. Not resisting, not clinging, just observing. It sounds simple, but it requires deep courage. Because when you stop distracting yourself, you start to see the raw, unfiltered truth of what's happening inside you. And that truth can be uncomfortable, but it's also liberating. Because once you face it, it loses power over you. One of the most transformative shifts you can make is this. Stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this revealing about me? That shift turns every challenge into a mirror. Every emotional storm becomes an invitation. You move from being a victim of life to a conscious participant in your own evolution. This isn't about becoming immune to pain. You will still feel. You will still have moments of doubt and fear. But instead of collapsing into them, you will be able to witness them. You will hold your own experience with presence, not panic. And that is true power. Not the absence of emotion, but the capacity to remain centered in the midst of it. As this awareness deepens, something else begins to shift. You start recognizing that many of the thoughts in your mind were never really yours. They were absorbed from parents, teachers, culture, past experiences, and just like you inherited them, you can also release them. You are not bound to keep carrying beliefs that were handed to you in moments of pain. You are not defined by how others once made you feel. You are not your past reactions. You are the one who observes, chooses, and creates. And when you remember that, you unlock the space to build a completely different experience of life. Not from force, not from perfection, but from presence, Let's talk about something that happens quietly, often unnoticed, yet influences nearly every decision you make. Emotional inheritance. Not in a genetic sense, but in how your inner world was shaped by the emotional climate you grew up in. If you were surrounded by criticism, you likely internalized the belief that love must be earned. If you were taught to hide your feelings, you might have concluded that vulnerability is weakness. These lessons weren't always spoken aloud. They were absorbed from the tension in a room, from what was left unsaid, from the reactions of those closest to you. Now, as an adult, those early impressions become the blueprint of how you move through life. You may find yourself in situations where you feel unseen, unheard, or not good enough, and even though you tell yourself to be strong, to be confident, a part of you still shrinks. Why? Because you're not responding to the present. You're responding to an old emotional imprint that never got processed. Carl Jung spoke often about individuation, the journey of becoming who you truly are, distinct from the roles, expectations, and wounds that were unconsciously handed to you. This process isn't just about insight, it's about courage. The courage to stop living a life based on fear-based conditioning and begin making choices from a place of truth. But that requires honesty, not just with others, but with yourself. It's easier to stay distracted, to blame your stress on work, to explain away your anxiety as just a personality trait, to tell yourself that being emotionally reactive is just how you are. But underneath all of that is something deeper, a younger part of you still asking to be seen, a part that was once told to stay quiet, to be small, to stay safe. And that part doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be welcomed. Healing begins when you stop pushing those parts away. When you stop treating your emotions like problems and start treating them like messengers. Because the truth is, no one is coming to rescue you from what you feel. No one can heal what you won't face. This is your work, and it's sacred. Let's look at an example. Maybe you find yourself constantly overgiving, saying yes when you mean no, stretching yourself to meet everyone's needs, avoiding conflict at all costs. On the surface, it looks like kindness, but underneath, there's often a fear. If I disappoint someone, they'll leave. If I stop being useful, I'll stop being lovable. That's not generosity, that's survival. It's a pattern rooted in the belief that your worth depends on what you do, not who you are. The only way to shift that is to bring it into the light. To pause the next time you feel the urge to please and ask, am I doing this from love or from fear? That question alone can change everything, because it invites awareness, and awareness breaks the spell. You may also find that you carry guilt, not for something you've done, but for who you are. Guilt for needing space. Guilt for saying no. Guilt for wanting more. That guilt often comes from being conditioned to abandon your own needs in order to belong. But real belonging doesn't require you to betray yourself. It requires you to be fully you, even when that makes others uncomfortable. When you begin honoring your truth, you may lose people who are only connected to the version of you that made them comfortable. And that's okay, let them go. Because the ones who remain and the ones who show up next will be aligned with your authentic self, not the mask you used to wear. This process is not linear. Some days you'll feel empowered. Other days, your old patterns will resurface. That's not failure, that's part of the journey. Growth doesn't mean never slipping. It means becoming aware more quickly, recovering with more compassion, and choosing differently more often. Eventually, something shifts. You start responding instead of reacting. You begin setting boundaries without guilt. You speak with more confidence, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you've stopped hiding. You trust your instincts more. You give yourself permission to rest, to say no, to take up space. And most importantly, you begin to feel safe inside your own body, in your own presence. That's what real transformation looks like. Not perfection, not constant happiness, but inner safety, emotional maturity, the quiet knowing that you can handle whatever rises within you without needing to numb it, escape it, or project it onto others. This isn't about becoming invincible. It's about becoming whole. And when you choose wholeness over performance, peace over approval, truth over comfort, you stop living from survivals and start living from alignment. There comes a moment in every journey when the truth can no longer be avoided. Not the truth others told you, not the one you rehearsed to protect yourself, but the quiet, undeniable truth rising from within. You are not broken. You are buried. Buried under years of conditioning, self-doubt, and emotional habits that were never truly yours. And when you finally start peeling back those layers, when you stop trying to fix what was never flawed in the first place, you begin to remember something powerful. You were never meant to live in fear of being misunderstood. You were never here to spend your life apologizing for your feelings. You were meant to be whole, clear, grounded, awake. Yes, the world will still try to test you. Yes, discomfort will still arise. But the difference is, you're no longer held hostage by it. You've stopped identifying with every storm that passes. You've stopped giving away your power to every passing thought. Now you respond with intention. You choose stillness when chaos knocks. You listen to your feelings without becoming them. You recognize that your peace is not the absence of noise. It's the presence of self-awareness, and that changes everything. Because once you experience what it feels like to remain centered when the world wobbles, you'll never settle for survival again. You'll stop outsourcing your worth. You'll stop waiting for others to validate what your soul already knows. That's real freedom. Not control over life, but liberation from the illusion that you need it. So now the question isn't whether people will disappoint you, or whether challenges will come. The question is, will you meet it all from your old wounds, or from your new wisdom? You get to decide. And that decision, made again and again, quietly rewires everything. If this message resonated with you, take a moment now, not just to reflect, but to act. Subscribe. Leave a comment below and tell me, what are you ready to let go of starting today? Because this is just the beginning.